I said I have a 600-pound animal about 10 inches away from me right now. I don't know how good a situation this is. Go whenever you're ready.
I love driving and BSing about classic Porsches. So how great would it be to take a killer road trip in an old 911 and visit a bunch of my best friends who love the same things? Oh, and while I'm on the trip, I thought I'd make a TV show about it. So let's drive the coolest cars on the best roads with the greatest people in America. I'm John Polnick, and you're coming with me on my Porsche Road Trip. Today on the road trip, my millennial buddy Austin will piss off some old guys.
It's air-cooled stuff. Come on, man. Tired of hearing about it.
My pal Danny from DG Vintage says you don't need a Porsche.
You don't actually have to have the car to be an enthusiast.
And I'll add weight to my 911. All in this episode of Porsche Road Trip with me, John Polnick.
We love these cars. I ain't no collector. You drive them things and I might respect ya.
The only city people can usually name when they think of the Pacific Northwest is Seattle. But if you've ever seen one of those moody teen vampire movies that take place in a foggy green forest, chances are your favorite bloody scenes were probably filmed here in a little town nestled in the mountain foothills called Snohomish, if you can pronounce it. It also happens to be where I grew up, and even though I don't live here anymore, I still call it home. I've hiked to the top of Mount Pilchuck more times than I can count. And that lake below it, well, that was my dock right there on the left growing up. I sure wish I had a car like this back then, because look at these roads. If you're a fan of classic Porsches like me, you know that with mountains come twisty roads. And the best thing about Snohomish is that they have them both in spades. So today on the road trip, we're going to visit a couple of my old friends from back in the day and drive those mountain roads in Porsches I could only dream of back when I was a high school kid with a newly minted driver's license. From the factory, Porsches are like pieces of art. But unlike a painting you'd get from a gallery or museum, they're works of art that you as an artist in your own right can make into your own work of art. One such artist is my friend Danny from DG Vintage Coachworks, who labors tirelessly in his shop right next to the river just outside of Snohomish. It rains here all the time.
It does.
Why would people be interested in driving cars that the heat doesn't work very well and they don't particularly do that great in wet conditions? What's the deal, man?
Yeah, it's definitely puts a damper on things, you know, especially in an older Porsche, that the windows fog up, and it's an addiction to me. It's a passion, it's an escape. So the weather really shouldn't matter.
A young friend of mine that loves these roads and Porsches as much as I do is Austin Duncan, a great guy and a true petrolhead who just got himself his first classic Porsche. Let's check it out.
You know, the 944 had to grow on me. It really did. You know, depending on what angle you look at it, it is like the ugliest car Porsche ever made, and yet it's like the best looking car Porsche ever made. Right? That's kind of a cliche. I want to say something else. I'm gonna be like, the 944 is like, it's great if its cousin wasn't the 924. A relative, you know, at the family reunion, just embarrassing. You know, it's got everything that was cool about the 80s. You know, it's boxy, it's got factory wide body, it's just like several squares colliding and working together with this big wing on it that's attached in rubber and, you know, creates rust. But other than that, the car was awesome, still is, the bee's knees. I'm still surprised at how much attention that the car gets, because I mean, I was just shy of becoming a 911 fanboy myself. Just looked at the camera, damn it. Okay. When this car came out, it was ahead of its time in a lot of ways. I believe the 944 Turbo was like one of the first cars to have an airbag, and it was transaxle design, and at the time, 200 and I believe 220 horsepower out of a 4-cylinder, was unheard of. I better look it up too. There's gonna be some guy that's like, no, yeah, whatever. So when this thing came out, it had to have just blown everybody's mind. I mean, I've had people pull up next to me and take pictures of it, and it's nice to see a clean example that's still on the road, because you really don't see that many clean ones anymore. It kind of went, when the market took a dip and they were all like really cheap, there aren't that many survivors. It was overlooked car, but it still has a lot of credibility for being what it was. It's a classic. If you open the garage and there was a 951 there, let's say a 930 and a Testarossa, and they were all in pristine shape, you would not look and be like, one of those cars doesn't belong. The thing about the 944 Turbo is it's made to be modified. I think when these cars first came out, people were not into modding cars, but there wasn't a market for it, really. Well, now modifying Porsches, though, it's like the thing to do. It's a great platform because there's hidden horsepower all over the car. You just have to find it. Well, the 944, I never just say 9. If people ask me what I say 944 Turbo. You have to add the turbo on there. The 944 is great, but you just have to put the turbo on there, so they, it's not just, you can't just say 944. I still say turbo. Turbo spool.
What sound does it make?
It's a 944 with a snail under the hood. It's awesome, it's great, it's faster than air-cooled, but will I keep this car forever? I want to say yes, but if another opportunity comes up, we might have to part ways. But I'm definitely going to enjoy it while I have it. I'm going to mod it like I'm keeping it. Not sure that's a good financial decision. Those air-cooled guys, they're always talking about, their 911s, and it's this, and your 944, it's not a real Porsche, and you're like, but it's faster, and it's more practical, and you can like not die trying to go around a corner. Yeah, that's right, I like water pumpers. It's the air-cooled stuff. Come on, man, I'm tired of hearing about it.
Oh yeah, he just burned out.
I know, yeah, I know. I know, I'm gonna have to change my identity now because I said that. But yeah. But I still want one.
Right before Luftgekocht last year, we were
The Martini car.
the Martini car, which was a normal C2 narrow body.
Yeah. When you were finished with it, it was freaking amazing.
Yeah.
But it didn't need a full restoration, but
No, it didn't at all. But that car was really good to me. I never had one issue, and I drove that car.
Did you?
I drove it in the rain. I drove it to California a couple times. So I drove it. I drove it a lot.
you bought that car, you put the wide body kit on it, you added a lot of cool stuff to it.
Yeah.
What's going on in the world of air-cooled Porsches like right now? Because that car was special in a lot of ways, but it also had some things that were like would have normally said, wait a minute. And that car sold on Bring a Trailer for a lot for that type of car.
A lot more money than I thought.
Right.
Just put it that way.
Yeah. Hey, congratulations, by the way.
Thanks. So what happens with Bring a Trailer is that the last 2 minutes, every time somebody bids, it goes back up to 2 minutes. So when the auction ended, it actually lasted another 20 minutes because people kept, and it was weird because one guy was bidding X amount, 911. The other guy was X amount, 964. And those were the two guys that were going at it.
Less than a minute left.
I think it's gonna go up 500 less than that.
964? Come on, 964. Come on, dude. Pull the trigger. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 86. Hammer!
The thing is, I really like what you did with that car. What does style mean as a car builder to you?
Everybody always says, hey, originality gets the big bucks and I still believe that too. But right now, I think it's gearing towards more of the hot rod stuff. What I'm saying is that some of the old timers, back then Porsche guys were, you know, kind of a little snobby and things like that. And now it's our generation coming in, so it changed everything.
Yeah.
And nowadays, you see the hipster types, tattoos, just all that type of stuff that you didn't see in Porsche that much.
Hey guys, I gotta tell you about our friends Godden Porsche of Las Vegas and Godden Classic. If you're looking for a new Porsche or a classic, you gotta call our friend Steve at Godden, this guy. Save yourself the hassle of screwing around with all the auctions like we always talk about, and just talk to Steve. He'll find you the classic Porsche you're looking for. Godden Porsche of Las Vegas. Across the Puget Sound in Bremerton, Washington is my buddy Alex Raphael at his workshop Max RPM with a little advice for beginner Porsche enthusiasts.
The Boxsters and the Caymans and stuff like that are affordable, and they're a nice car. And I do see a lot of people that have, you know, that have bought them because they got a good deal, and they've had a lot of things rectified that were an issue. And so now you'll see them. You know, bottom line is they're a good car.
Yeah.
So low miles, high miles, you need service history, and you can see what's been done. And if not, then you kind of get a baseline of what the car might need and look it over and plan it from there. But they're a great car.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I've had a bunch of them. I've had a C4S that I got from a guy that was panicked because he thought he was going to have to redo the IMS. And that car was awesome. It had like 73,000 miles on it. Did an IMS, put some spark plugs and coils on it, and it was mint. The thing was awesome. There was, you know, and it ended up, the wife made me sell it to a buddy.
Lucky buddy.
Yeah, it was.
Come on, man.
I was trying to keep it under the radar. But, you know, I said, what's that? Oh, it's a customer. It's in here. I'm just fixing it. And then I'd be driving it home. She goes, what are you driving that customer's car home for? Oh, I got to test drive it, you know. So
Clearly, you have to test drive it.
Just, you know, get a good PPI.
Pre-purchase inspection, kids. Pre.
I know.
Not post.
Seriously.
These days, you don't actually have to have the car to be an enthusiast, because you got all these younger kids that are real high tech and they got the cameras, and you know, so before it's like you had to have a car.
They're part of the community.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's interesting.
100%, because you know, back then we had to have the car. They are accepted because, you know, we all want to see the pictures, we want to see the video.
Do you find when you're doing the car scene and you're at car events or with your car friends, is there less of this going on? Is there?
I think there's more of this.
There's a lot of this.
There's a lot of that.
But I feel like
there is.
People are actually talking to each
other.
Yes,
I feel like people are really engaged in conversation.
Yeah.
You know, obviously it has to do with cars, but you know, other things spill into that.
And now a teaching moment with the professor.
The Porsche 964 ushered in a new era for the air-cooled 911. With this new era came some firsts for the 911 that some purists saw as nothing short of blasphemous. To start, the 911 saw optional all-wheel drive for the first time on a production car. Many felt that power driven by the rear wheels exclusively was a defining characteristic of the 911, and thus they ceremoniously thumbed their collective noses at such an outlandish handling upgrade. But the 964 was popular, with over 60,000 cars sold by the time production ceased in 1994. The 964 has since become a beloved treasure to many an air-cooled Porsche collector. Incidentally, the 964 is now used exclusively as the substructure for every custom 911 built by aftermarket tuner Singer. The 964 shown here is a special car with option code M491, or Turbo Look, with only about 250 examples produced. Professor approved.
My friend Kai Roberts owns what, in my opinion, is the coolest Porsche of all time, a Kremer 930 Turbo. And today, just across the river from Danny's workshop, we get to take it for a ride on the infamous Ben Howard Road, one of the best roads in Washington, just as long as you remember to scan ahead for cows.
My name is Kai Robertson. I drive a 1976 German market Porsche 911 Turbo Carrera that when the car was very young, it was turned into a Kremer 935 K1. Well, a 935 is a purpose-built racing car. And this company called Kremer, they built those cars for Porsche. So a 930 like this car doesn't really have anything to do with a 935, but at the time, Kremer made a few that resembled the 935, and that's what this car is. The early 930 turbo, like this car, means it's a 3-liter. It's not a 3.3 like the 78 and later cars. It doesn't have an intercooler. The wheelbase is shorter, so when you get into a 935 looking thing like this car, you don't have normal headlights at all. No pop-ups, no bug eyes. You have these headlights in the bumper that are, it's nebulous if it's legal or not. You have monstrously wide fender flares in the back with little vents behind the rear wheels. Everything you see that's not standard 930 is a fiberglass add-on. And the fiberglass is some of the thickest, strongest stuff I've ever seen. With the whole Porsche hobby for me, I've always been attracted to the funky, weird ones. The more strange and off the beaten path, the better. So when I saw this one, ice green, stripes, green shag carpet, a green leather dash, it just spoke to me. And the fact that it was a turbocharged, air-cooled engine was that much better. The thing with this car, as opposed to maybe a rotisserie, restored, factory, perfect example, this car can be driven without feeling too much guilt, and I think it gives this car a little bit more feeling than maybe one that you can't even breathe on. It might get a ding in the windshield, it might get a bug on it, but you're okay. I mean, it's meant to be driven, and that's what I like to do with it. When you're driving a vintage 930 with racing tires, basically, all bets are off. I mean, you can settle back in this thing, realize you've got 4 gears, and you can utilize at least the first 3 to most of their potential. At least most of my potential as a driver. The things like smelling like fresh gasoline and exhaust fumes and the glorious sound that it makes, I mean, those are all pluses that are maybe minuses for a lot of people. When you drive this car, it makes you feel special, and you can put up with all the funny stuff that it does because it's just that much more rewarding when you're able to successfully pilot the thing down the road without blowing it up.
Oh, hey, look, there's Lake Roziger again. And there's the house I grew up in. See it? It's the one with the dock. Boy, all this driving down memory lane is making me hungry. I think I'll head back into Snoho and share with you one of my best kept secrets.
My favorite thing about roads out in the middle of nowhere is that they always lead somewhere, like places like this. Gino's restaurant has been here for 47, 48 years. It was established back in 1971, which happens to be the same year that I was established. The thing that's different about Gino's, unlike me, is that nothing has changed here. The decor is the same, the walls are the same, the paintings on the wall, everything is the same. But my favorite thing that's the same is the food. You gotta see what is happening right in front of me. This is the lasagna with spare ribs. Killing me, killing me. This is definitely not something that I should be eating. but I don't know what is better than having a great drive on a great road than winding up at a place like Gino's and having a meal like this.
When you're on a long road trip by yourself like this one, a lot of crazy thoughts come through your head. Sometimes they're brilliant, sometimes not so much.
When I was a teenager in high school, I saved up all my money for a 1984 Volkswagen Scirocco. It was my first cool car, and I had this romantic notion of how it was going to change my life. You know, I bought into the fantasy that having that car would change my life for the better. I thought that girls would suddenly like me, that adults would take me seriously. I don't know, I think I even thought I'd have these spectacular car chases or something. It was dumb. I mean, it was so bad that sometimes my buddies and I would go to one of those all-age nightclubs that they used to have back in the 80s, and I was the guy that would wait outside the club and stand next to my champagne Volkswagen thinking that some pretty girl would come along and just throw herself at me because she saw my cool ride. I mean, it's absurd. I guess I blame 80s movies. I just bought into that whole fantasy. It, of course, never came true. I mean, it turns out you actually have to go inside the nightclub and talk to girls in order to get them to like you. Who knew? I mean, it also turns out that no matter how cool your ride is, it's never a substitution for self-confidence. Of course, then again, maybe if I had this really cool Porsche 911 to stand next to an old Club Cheetah back in the 80s, that things would have been different. Nah, who am I kidding? It's probably the mullet.
That's wide.
That looks good, man. That's a really good angle for your head. Doesn't make you look stupid at all.